Okay, now that we have this basic scene, let's do some basic lighting. This is kind of the fun part. And the exciting thing about a dusk shot that we're going to do is that there's a lot more lighting considerations than a normal exterior, because what we're going to want to do is light the interior of this house because it's a lot of glass, so we're going to show it off. That's why everything is in there. All the models are there so that we can look right through the glass. And at the same time, it's going to be dark outside. So the showcase of our rendering is going to be the interior of the house, even though we're on the outside. So camera 3 is one of the cameras I set up that I like. And right now, let's just do a basic render. And there's nothing special about this camera right now. We're going to look at it a little bit more later, but it's just a V-Ray camera. In this version of V-Ray, the V-Ray camera is back. We've seen in this course how to use the 3ds Max physical camera and also the V-Ray camera. Now we're using the V-Ray camera again because it has gone away, then come back when I'm using V-Ray next here. So either one actually works. They both do similar things. First, I'm going to go into my render settings and go to V-Ray and make sure that environment tab, the GI environment is unchecked. This is actually an override, and it's overriding anything we have in the 3ds Max environment, which is found right here. Right now there's a sky in there associated with a sun that I once had in my scene. I'm going to delete that because that sun is no longer here. So right now, if we just render with this camera, we'll see what we get if I render a production. Okay, right now you're seeing what my scene looks like. You can see I have a bunch of lights on the interior that are lighting up this inside of the house. I have this little light over here, which doesn't make sense right now because the model's not there. I'm going to put a little lamp over there. And then I have the pool being lit up by these lights. And there's nothing to the pool other than making a basic water material, which you'll have in my model. And then I'm just putting a light blue material on the inside of the pool and then lighting it up under that water. So you're seeing the pool material refract through the water. And that's what makes it look kind of a little bit glowing here. Okay, so that's our lighting situation right now. Let's stop this rendering. Before we go any further, I want to show you guys one thing. Let's dock this here. This right here is something I've added to my toolbar, which may not be in my original UI, but I find it to be extremely useful. If I click on it, it's the V-Ray light lister. And it just shows every light in here, okay? And it shows the multiplier, it shows the color. You can see I'm using really, really warm light. That here I'm actually setting it by temperature. So a soft white light bulb is between 2700 and 3000, and that's what we're usually used to as far as interior lights, so that's what I set it to. That's actually a really, really warm color, but that's adjusted with white balance in the camera, which we will see. Okay, so you can see the values are high. Those values are always sort of relative to what our exposure is on the camera and all those kinds of things. So we'll look at that more as well, but right now that's our basic lighting situation. We have no sky in here. So if you want to add the V-Ray light lister to your toolbar, you will simply need to click on a toolbar, right click on it, go to customize, go to toolbar, and then here go to all commands, and then go in here and start typing V-Ray light lister, and it should take you to the spot, and then you can actually just drag it just like this and add it to any toolbar. So see, now I have two of them. Okay, I'll delete this one. But I've still got my old one. So I would recommend putting the V-Ray light lister in, and I'll show you why. We can kind of adjust it in real time, and we can select any light from there and adjust it in real time and watch its effect as we're sitting here. So that's pretty cool. But for now, we're going to add in a V-Ray sun, a basic V-Ray sun. We'll do that by going to our command panel and the Create tab, and then go to Lights, drop down to V-Ray Light, V-Ray Sun. And we just drag. Let's say no and delete that. We're going to create a new layer for it, or at least draw on one that's visible. So here's my layers. Let's just create a new layer. Lighting. Make sure it's current by checking here. We can close that and create it again. I'm going to go from here. Would you like to automatically add a V-Ray sky to the environment map? Yes. So what's that doing? It's going rendering environment in here in the 3ds Max setting. It's now added a V-Ray sky here that is associated with this sun. So when I move that sun, the sky color changes. For dusk, we want the sun to be low in the sky, like maybe right here. Now, if we go back to our camera, which is camera 3 in this model, and render, let's do a save first. Okay, let's just render it. As you can see, it's very, very bright, too bright. And we can push this button here to bring up our exposure settings and things like that. But you know what? It's so burned out that we're not going to be able to bring it back. So it's too bright. Even if we change this exposure, we're not going to get back all our information that we want. It's not bad. Okay, so what do we do? Let's stop this. Go to the V-Ray light lister, and we'll do our old trick of turning the sun way, way down in intensity to like 0.05. And render again. And actually, if we click this thing here, if we're in the V-Ray frame buffer and we click this is interactive rendering. So every time we change it, it will actually show us interactively, almost in real time. Okay, so that's with it at 0.05. If the exposure control is completely turned off, we're still getting this. So we could get this at the correct exposure like this by changing our camera exposure, as we've seen before in the course, or we can turn down the sun like we just did. We can turn up the sun if we want. This is where that light lister comes in handy because we can change this to 0.08 and then we will get a new interactive render going on. So what we would try to do here with this V-Ray sky is get everything in the right balance. So we want these lights to look correct in relation to the sky. And this is about right. At dusk, this isn't going to be glowing too much because it's still pretty light outside. If we put this down really, really far, 0.01, the sky will get really, really dark. Like this. And then we could like turn up the exposure. Make sure it's checked. Okay, now the relationship between the sky and the lights are a little bit different. These lights are appearing a little brighter on the inside. We could go even lower with this, 0.002 with the sky. And we could leave it dark like this. Now it's like almost a nighttime. Or we could pretend like it's a long exposure shot. And now the inside's getting really, really bright in relation to the sky. So maybe somewhere like right there is kind of cool. Okay, so you can see what you can play with, and this interactive rendering thing is pretty awesome too, because we get basically instant feedback. Okay, so that's the V-Ray sun, and eventually we're going to add an HDRI for our sky, which gives us even more interesting lighting, but in the most basic sense, we can just take a V-Ray sun, pop it in there, and we have a pretty nice dusk rendering already. Let's see what else we can do.